Recep Tayyip Erdoğan was born on February 26, 1954, in the working-class neighborhood of Kasımpaşa in Istanbul, Turkey. His father, Ahmet Erdoğan, served as a Coast Guard officer. His mother, Tenzile, was a homemaker who instilled in her children a deep sense of piety and discipline. The family's roots were from Rize, a rugged province on the Black Sea coast, known for its tea gardens, fishermen, and conservative values. In that culture, faith was not theory. It was identity. Erdoğan grew up hearing the call to prayer echo across narrow streets, learning Quranic verses in small mosques and selling simit, Turkish bread rings, on the streets to help his family. From an early age, he was shaped by scarcity, pride, and religion, three forces that would define his politics forever. He attended an Islamic-oriented secondary school, an Imam Hatip Lisesi, then completed a degree in economics and business administration at Marmara University. In his youth, he was drawn to football, rugged, competitive, strategic. For several years, he played semi-professionally for a local club, dreaming of the National League. But the political currents of the 1970s pulled him elsewhere. Turkey at the time was polarized between leftist revolutionaries and right-wing nationalists. Coups, riots, and ideological battles filled the streets in Turkey. By his mid-20s, Erdoğan had become a fiery speaker for Erbakan's National Salvation Party. He blended religious conservatism with the street instincts of Istanbul's working class, talking about dignity, family, and faith in a language ordinary Turks understood. The military coup of 1980 dissolved all parties. But when political activity resumed, Erdoğan re-emerged with Erbakan's welfare party, Refah. In 1985, he married Emine Gülbaran, a fellow devout Muslim from Siirt province. They would have 4 children, Ahmet Burak, Nekmettin Bilal, Ezra, and Sümeyye, who later became public figures in their own right. Erdoğan's rise began in the gritty districts of Istanbul's poor. In the 1980s and early 1990s, he organized youth branches, gave sermons about social justice, and promised clean politics in a country tired of corruption. His breakthrough came in 1994 when he was elected Mayor of Istanbul, a metropolis long plagued by pollution, traffic chaos, and water shortages. Many expected him to fail. Instead, he stunned critics. He modernized waste management, expanded public transport, cleaned the Golden Horn, and restored water supplies. His administration was efficient, austere, and visibly devout. He banned alcohol sales in municipal cafes and emphasized Islamic morality without imposing it by law. Istanbul's transformation turned him into a national phenomenon. The pious man who could deliver modern governance. Success invited danger. In 1997, Turkey's staunchly secular military ousted Erbakan's Islamist-led coalition in what became known as the post-modern coup. A year later, Erdoğan recited a poem by Ziya Gökalp at a rally. "The mosques are our barracks, the domes our helmets, the minarets our bayonets." A court ruled the lines as incitement to religious hatred, and in 1999 he was sentenced to 4 months in prison and banned from political office. The establishment believed his career finished. Instead, prison forged his myth. The humble believer punished by elites for speaking faith. When he walked out, Turkey itself was changing. Economic crises, corruption scandals, and the devastating 1999 Marmara earthquake had discredited old parties. Erdoğan and his allies from the reformist wing of the welfare movement created a new force, the Justice and Development Party, AKP, in 2001. They framed it as conservative democratic rather than Islamist, promising clean government, market reforms, and European Union integration. The message resonated. In the 2002 elections, the AKP won a majority. Though Erdoğan was still legally banned from politics, his close ally, Abdullah Gül, became prime minister until parliament lifted the ban. In March 2003, Erdoğan formally assumed the premiership. His early years in power were defined by pragmatism. He stabilized the economy, tamed inflation, and attracted foreign investment. Turkey's GDP tripled over the next decade. He courted the European Union, passed reforms that curtailed the military's political role, and negotiated cautiously with Kurdish factions to end decades of internal war. Internationally, he was hailed as the proof that Islam and democracy could coexist. Western leaders called him a model for the Muslim world. Inside Turkey, mosques were full and malls were too, an unusual synthesis of piety and capitalism. Yet power, once consolidated, began to harden. By his third term, Erdoğan's government was accused of tightening control over media, courts, and civil society. Secularists warned that he was Islamizing the state under the banner of democracy. His supporters saw it differently, a reversal of decades of secular oppression. He lifted bans on headscarves in universities, built massive infrastructure projects, and nation as one. In 2013, protests erupted in Istanbul's Gezi Park after plans to replace a small green space with a shopping complex modeled on Ottoman. Involving ministers and businessmen close to him exploded online. Recordings appeared to implicate his own family. Soldiers linked to the Gulen network seized tanks and jets, bombing parliament and killing over 250 people. Erdoğan appeared on a FaceTime call urging citizens to resist. Millions flooded the streets. The coup collapsed within hours. The aftermath reshaped Turkey. Under emergency powers, Erdoğan launched massive purges. Military officers, judges, academics, journalists, over 100,000 dismissed or arrested. He called it necessary to protect the republic. Critics called it the birth of an elected autocracy. In 2017, a constitutional referendum narrowly approved his plan to replace the parliamentary system with an executive presidency, concentrating vast power in his hands. In 2018, he became Turkey's first president under the new system, blending head of state and head of government authority. On the global stage, Erdoğan positioned Turkey as an independent actor between East and West, a NATO member hosting US bases, yet purchasing Russian S-400 missiles. A Muslim leader condemning Israel's actions in Gaza, yet trading heavily with Tel Aviv. He intervened militarily in Syria, Libya, and the South Caucasus, projecting regional influence unseen since Ottoman times. To admirers, he was the voice of a humiliated Islamic world reclaiming dignity. To detractors, an opportunist exploiting nationalism and religion. Religion remained central to his persona. Erdoğan prays publicly, quotes the Quran in speeches, and often describes his journey as guided by divine will. He oversaw the reconversion of Hagia Sophia from museum back to mosque in 2020, a symbolic act that thrilled conservatives and infuriated secularists. He promotes Sunni Islam intertwined with Turkish nationalism, a synthesis sometimes called Neo-Ottomanism. He presents himself as protector of the faithful against Western decadence, while championing modern technology, drones, and infrastructure as signs of God-given progress. Domestically, the economy, once his pride, began to stumble in the late 2000s. Heavy borrowing, construction booms, and interference with the central bank triggered currency collapse and inflation. His insistence on low interest rates, framed as obedience to Islamic principles forbidding riba, usury, deepened the crisis. Yet he retained loyal support among the working and rural classes, who saw in him not just a politician, but one of their own, a man who spoke their language, and shared their faith. In February 2023, massive earthquakes struck southern Turkey and northern Syria, killing tens of thousands. The government's response was criticized as slow, yet Erdoğan's presence in disaster zones and promise of rapid reconstruction helped him maintain credibility. 3 months later, in May 2023, he faced his most serious electoral challenge from Kemal Kılıçdaroğlu, a secular opposition leader backed by a 6-party coalition. Despite inflation and discontent, Erdoğan won re-election with 52% of the vote, extending his rule into a third decade, making him the longest-serving leader in the Republic's history. By 2025, Erdoğan stands as a figure both revered and reviled. To his supporters, he resurrected national pride, restored the voice of Islam in public life, and steered Turkey toward independence in a world of declining Western hegemony. To critics, he dismantled checks and balances, muzzled free press, and replaced pluralism with personality cult. Yet both camps agree on one thing: he changed the trajectory of the Turkish Republic more than any leader since Ataturk. From the streets of Kasımpaşa to the palaces of Ankara, Erdoğan's journey mirrors Turkey's struggle between faith and modernity, East and West, empire and republic. He speaks of the Ottoman past not as nostalgia, but as unfinished destiny. Under him, Turkey built drones that shape wars abroad, mega-mosques that dominate skylines, and narratives that blend religion, nationalism, and defiance. At 71, he remains vigorous, delivering hour-long speeches with the cadence of a preacher and the fury of a street fighter. His belief in divine purpose is unshakable. He quotes the Prophet Muhammad's saying that, "The best among you is the one who is most useful to his people." To Erdoğan, leadership is service through strength. He prays 5 times a day, fasts during Ramadan, and begins cabinet meetings with recitations from the Quran. Faith is not for display. It is the lens through which he interprets power, history, and mortality. The contradictions in his life are the contradictions of his country. Democratic yet authoritarian, secular by constitution yet religious by heart, Western in alliances yet Eastern in soul. He has outlasted generals, journalists, and rivals, surviving coups, protests, and global condemnation. Every crisis he turns into proof of destiny. Whether future historians call him reformer or autocrat, Erdoğan's impact is undeniable. He redefined Turkish politics, revived Islamic confidence in public life, and made his nation a decisive regional actor. Like all towering figures, he embodies both the aspirations and the anxieties of his people. From a boy selling simit on Istanbul's docks to the man commanding armies and shaping alliances, his story is a study in endurance and belief, a testament to how conviction, once fused with ambition, can move an entire nation. Recep Tayyip Erdoğan's life is the chronicle of modern Turkey itself. A struggle between the call to prayer and the call to progress, between the empire that was and the republic still becoming. And somewhere between those calls, a single voice still echoes, firm, devout, and unyielding, declaring to the world that Turkey will chart its own fate, guided by God, guarded by will, and bound forever to the restless heart of its people.